Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari Chen and welcome back to my channel. Today we are continuing with another reading of The Imperial Uncle by Feng Gua Guo. You guys, I have a very weird relationship with this novel. I absolutely adore it, but there is some weird experience I'm having with it that I cannot put into profound words quite yet. Anyway, I'm excited to continue reading. I wish you all could see my novel because it is littered with sticky notes. That's how confused I am about how I feel. But let's start. Today we're reading 2 chapters, and that's not because of anything great. It's simply because chapter 8 is too short to be a standalone, and so I added chapter 9, which is also short. So let's get started. Chapter 8. Titan and I sit in a small, airy room on Jiting Lane. He sipped his wine, then brought it up to his nose and sniffed. The wine is better than I expected from a little place like Chengzhou. This huadiao is truly unique. That's bamboo leaf green, I said. Titan looked astonished. It isn't huadiao? Why does bamboo leaf green taste like huadiao? Because it's Chengzhou's style of bamboo leaf green, I said. His face still a picture of disbelief. Titan tasted a whole cup, exclaiming again and again. Then he put the empty cup back down on the table. Uncle, where have you been all these years? Oh, all over the place, just roaming. Titan seemed to hesitate. Then he said with a smile, I didn't think you would acknowledge me, Uncle. I only meant to come and take a look. If you'd look at me cluelessly and asked who I was, I would have left. Even you're here, I thought to myself. If I still refused to admit anything, it would be much too unreasonable. Titan hesitated again, then said, Uncle, you might have guessed that I actually came with Yunyu. I inclined my head slightly. Titan continued, We came at my Imperial brother's behest. Yunyu is to act out in the open, primarily to manage the flooding, but we've also come with another important assignment. I'm here in secret for precisely that reason. I remained composed and listened to him. Titan paused. I and Yunyu were both issued a command by my Imperial brother, telling us to bring a certain person back with us. You must have already guessed who that person is. The words were already in my throat. Titan, though you called uncle and your uncle answered, the uncle sitting in front of you is only a merchant, nothing to do with that treacherous prince now sleeping inside a tomb. Do you understand? I drank my wine calmly, and Titan said, It seems you have guessed, so I'll stop beating around the bush. He knocked on his forehead with an anguished look and sighed lengthily. That's right. That person is Liu Tongyi. My Imperial brother wants to ask Liu Tongyi to come back and be Imperial Chancellor again. I think my Imperial brother's decision is truly wise beyond compare, said Titan with a grimace. I approve of it wholeheartedly. Zhang Ping... Zhang Ping! What's wrong with Zhang Ping? I couldn't resist asking. I recalled Zhang Ping being quite upright and incorruptible. He had accomplished a great deal at the Court of Judicial Review, solving cases deftly and speedily. His actions were even more vigorous and resolute than Liu Tongyi's in the same post. That's right, said Titan bleakly. You've been happily wandering far and wide. You don't know what we've been suffering in the capital. Zhang Ping, he is a good official, but he really is only suited to the Ministry of Justice or the Court of Judicial Review. He's simply not fit to be Imperial Chancellor. According to Titan, during the years Zhang Ping had been Imperial Chancellor, the whole court had been imbued with the grimness of a Court of Judicial Review interrogation. Even Qizhe, when he came to court every day and saw Zhang Ping standing at the head of the officials, felt as if he were on trial. Solving cases had become an addiction for Zhang Ping, especially peculiar cases like family massacres, violent murders, and so on. When he had served in the Ministry of Justice, in addition to examining new cases, he had buried himself in old files and dug up all the peculiar old unresolved cases to reinvestigate, and even reinvestigated cases that had been wrongly decided and resulted in a miscarriage of justice. This had implicated certain courtiers, giving him a reputation of being honorable that spread far and wide. After Liu Tongyi became Imperial Chancellor, Zhang Ping was promoted to Chamberlain of the Court of Judicial Review. Based on popularity and public acclaim, and especially his reputation among the common people, Zhang Ping was the greatest of all the officials. After Liu Tongyi resigned his position, most of the candidates to become Imperial Chancellor after him were decades his senior. Only Zhang Ping was of similar age to his predecessor and popular, with an impressive record. Apparently, when deliberations about Zhang Ping's appointment had still been underway, Zhang Ping had earnestly declined several times. He wished to dedicate his whole life to the Court of Judicial Review. At the time, Qizhe and all the officials had taken this for false modesty, a necessary affectation. The night the edict came down with the appointment, Zhang Ping sat in the office of the Court of Judicial Review till daybreak, weeping over files. As Chitan spoke, I remembered that when I had still been the treacherous Prince Huai, Zhang Ping had once come to Huai Manor on my birthday to deliver a gift. He said solemnly to me that bladed weapons hanging on the walls shouldn't be sharpened, that it would be easy for assassins to hide in the big vases by the walls, that my nightly patrols needed nets to dredge the water features, and that Huai Manor's encircling wall should be a little taller. He had looked at me with eyes filled with anticipation of my assassination. When it came time for him to bid farewell and depart, his gaze lingered significantly on the rose trellis, as if he hoped that some assassins would leap out from its shelter, or perhaps that he could get a shovel and dig up a corpse from underneath it. I thought at the time that this Lord Zhang really was too forthright. I might be a treacherous prince, but he still didn't have to be so obvious about hoping I'd be murdered on my birthday. Now it seemed that he was always like that, and I was being paranoid. Chitan said that when Liu Tongyi was Imperial Chancellor, it had been all gentle sunshine and spring breezes at court. When Zhang Ping took over, it was all chilly winds. The year before last, at least, Chitan had been serving diligently in Henan. He hadn't been at court and hadn't had anything to do with Zhang Ping. When he had returned last year, bringing the antiques his diligent service had turned up to show off to Qizhe, Zhang Ping had happened to be present, and Qizhe had casually asked him to appraise them. Zhang Ping had then suggested 3 or more bloody histories for each antique, all murders, miscarriages of justice, unsolved cases, and scared Chitan's wife and some young princesses listening from behind a screen to tears. That night, when they came home, Princess Dai had lost her temper at Chitan. She insisted on having a Taoist priest come in to perform a cleansing ritual, and insisted that Chitan throw away those haunted things, or else she was leaving him, taking the children, and going back to her parents' house. I still have no peace at home, Chitan said bitterly. Oh, right. What Zhang Ping was most interested in was you, Uncle Juan. He spoke more and more loquaciously, and was now even calling me Uncle Juan. I didn't bother telling him that he was wrong, and he ought to be calling me Uncle Wang or Uncle Tseye. Chitan continued, I don't know if he was doing it on purpose or not, but Zhang Ping kept bringing you up over and over in front of my imperial brother, Uncle. One day, he'd say that you might not be dead, and that the whole thing was a hoax, and so on and so on. And then not long after that, he'd say that you probably were dead because of such and such, and the examination of the body hadn't turned up such and such. When eldest imperial uncle first woke up and the whole truth came out, he advised that those ashes be examined. He said that the ashes of a person who had been poisoned were different. When it came time to relocate the grave, Yunyu was responsible for it, and Zhang Ping went to Yunyu and asked whether he could scoop up some ashes to examine them. Nearly annoyed Yunyu to death, my imperial brother was ready to have him dragged out and beheaded. Well, anyway, a lot was happening then. Chitan looked up at me. Actually, Imperial Uncle, Why didn't you tell anyone but eldest Imperial uncle about this business back then? Even if you were afraid my Imperial brother wouldn't be able to conceal it from the Empress Dowager, you still might have told someone else. All of this is ancient history, I said. Let it go. Qi-tan looked at me. You're right. Then, with a sudden smile, he said, It's a good thing that Zhang Ping has been going back and forth all these years, saying you might not be dead, or that you really were dead. That's the only reason I didn't take you for a ghost and jump out of my skin when I saw you in the boat. He served himself some food, poured himself another cup of Chengzhou's bamboo leaf green, and drank a bit. Uncle, what are you planning to do now? I'm a merchant, I said. I think I'll go on roaming far and wide. Qi-tan said haltingly, But the fact that I've met you, even if I don't say anything, Yun must have... This brat was getting craftier by the day. Even Yun was covering for me. But he had come running to the shop with a crowd of secret guards, those from the capital and those dispatched locally alike, and called me uncle right in front of Bai Rujin. Bai Rujin hadn't noticed anything at the time, but given his connection to the Perfect, if he asked a few questions, he was sure to get the gist. And here he was looking innocent and putting the blame on Yun. We can come back to that later, I said. We haven't seen each other in years. We ought to drink a few more cups. Qi-tan said, Uncle, you're mad at me for rushing over here thoughtlessly and giving your identity away, aren't you? I did hesitate, but I thought that since Yun spent the night at your place yesterday, and Liu Tongyi must have known already, there was no way it could be concealed. Liu Tongyi only found out after reaching Chengzhou, about the same time as the two of you, I said. The words must have already known were rich with implication. I would first clarify matters on Liu Tongyi's behalf to avoid getting him in trouble. Qi-tan looked at me and gave a bitter smile. Uncle, there is one thing that Zhang Ping was right about. If you really weren't dead, you wouldn't trust anyone. He picked up his wine cup and drained it in one gulp. Heck no, he wouldn't! After 3 pitchers of wine, Qi-tan was beginning to slur a little. He said pitifully to me, Uncle, there's something I've been keeping bottled up that I have to tell you about. You always used to feel bad because you were suspected, but you weren't alone. For example, they actually suspected me more than you. My Imperial brother and I are brothers after all. My Imperial father favored my mother, and you doted on me when I was little. It only got better after I'd spent all my money on antiques and everyone decided I was a spendthrift. And you were the only one willing to lend me money, even at the risk of rousing suspicion. You'd think everyone wanted to be emperor, but my Imperial brother really is a good emperor, and he's really nice to all us brothers. What I think is, you can't always be thinking about gloomy things like that. You just have to be happy. I lifted my cup of wine. I'm quite a bit older than you, but my views on this subject fall short of yours. I honor you for that speech. Qi-tan giggled and said, Uncle, I'm only telling the truth. But his eyes were drifting over to the place he had been constantly staring at ever since he and I had met. After this cup, will you take that bone hairpin out of your hair and let me see it? It looks pretty old. Is it some foreign relic? Oh my God. Sir. When we left the restaurant, Qi-tan was stumbling a little. The secret guards who had followed him here did their duty admirably, staying ambushed nearby and leaving me to prop him up myself. Qi-tan was going back to the government office. If he went to see Liu Tongyi in his current condition, instead of talking him into anything, he was more likely to send him running from the reek of alcohol. I had no choice but to haul him into the Bai family's boat and return to my little house. When I pulled Qi-tan onto the second-floor corridor, he looked around with glazed eyes. What an unusual-looking latrine. I nearly let go and allowed him to topple over the railing and into the water. This is where Uncle lives now. Qi-tan rubbed his eyes. You live in a latrine? He pointed at the wooden barrel I kept my water in. Uncle, why do you have a stove next to the commode? Is it so you don't catch a chill while going at night? I'd been planning to send him off to bed, but when I heard this, I knew he was drunk out of his senses. Therefore, I once again unfolded the bamboo couch Bai Rujin had sent and dropped Chitan onto it. I stuck a pillow under his head. Chitan rolled over and immediately fell asleep. I lit a fire and heated a kettle of tea, then sat inside sipping tea and checking my accounts, waiting for Yunyu or someone from the local government to pick up Chitan. Eventually, I also got tired and went to bed to nap through the afternoon. In the evening, Commissioner Yuan finally came in a little boat. Chitan was awake, but he wasn't planning to leave. He wanted dinner. Yunyu sent his guards to get some porridge and side dishes. Chitan and I sat at the table, but Yunyu stood by. I said, "Please come meet with us, Lord Yuan." "I have already had dinner," Yunyu said calmly. "Thank you, Master Zhao." After eating, Chitan finally left with Yunyu. He didn't appear the next day. I figured that he had already gone to lobby Liu Tongyi. The day after that was when Liu Tongyi and I had arranged to discuss the logistics of purchasing the silk. In the morning, Liu Tongyi arrived at the shop as arranged. Bai Rujin brought out his ledger and first verified the count, then settled the price and delivery arrangements. Bai Rujin must have already learned something. His manner was a little different from before. Instead of genially calling me young fellow at every turn, he was now a little reserved. Liu Tongyi, however, behaved as usual, still acting the part of Master Mei. When we had paused after a lengthy discussion to drink some tea, while Bai Rujin went to use the latrine, I smiled and said to Liu Tongyi, "I hear Master Mei had a guest come by recently who wanted to convince you to go into a different trade." "Master Zhao is well informed," Liu Tongyi said, smiling. "I find my current trade congenial and have no intention of going into another one for the time being." "Very good," I said. I was worried that Master Mei would change professions and wasn't planning on transporting me anymore. Holding his teacup, Liu Tongyi said, "Master Zhao's transport is a major transaction. Am I likely to renege on my promise?" I saluted grandly and said with a smile, "With Master Mei's promise, I am as confident as Kong Ming borrowing the eastern wind." "There was no call to borrow the eastern wind," Liu Tongyi said languidly. "A southerly wind is rising, and the floodwaters are falling. The day after tomorrow, we can set out." The next day, Bai Rujin did not visit. Chitan must have gone to be a mouthpiece and had no time to come, so I was free to pack my things at home. I had gone far and wide over the last few years and was accustomed to traveling light. As long as I had money, I would be able to buy anything I needed. I would certainly bring none of the things I had purchased in Chengzhou. I packed 2 changes of clothes and gathered up all my money. I picked out a few of the local baubles I had bought in various places over the years. Chitan would probably enjoy the rest, so I left them in the closet, confident that he would find them. The drinking vessels Yunyu had given me were inconvenient to bring along, but he had gone to the trouble of giving them to me after all. It wouldn't look good to leave them behind. I found some pieces of soft cloth, wrapped them up, and shoved them into my travel bag. And that was it for packing. At midday, I took the Bai family's boat out to eat. After returning, I lay in bed and took a midday nap. I felt quite emotional. I had bought a house, made myself a nest at last. I'd thought I could settle down for a little while. Now I had to start drifting again. It was my destiny to lead the life of a drifter. When I opened my eyes, I saw a person in the outer room. It gave me a start. He was dressed casually, sitting at the table. It was Yunyu. I stood up and straightened my clothes. "When did you arrive, Lord Yuan? However did you find time among all your cares to come to my humble abode?" Yunyu stood from the table. "I arrived recently. I saw you were asleep, so I did not disturb you. I hope you will forgive me." Smiling, I said, "It's no problem, Lord Yuan." I went to the outer room and lit the stove to heat a kettle of water, then pulled up a chair at the table. "Please sit, Lord Yuan. Tea will take a moment." Yunyu sat across from me. "Master Zhao leaves the door open while sleeping. Are you not afraid of thieves? You're joking, Lord Yuan, I said. I'm a single man and empty-handed. The thieves wouldn't come if I invited them. Smiling, Yun-yu said, You're the one who's joking, Master Zhao. You are a major merchant who has traveled far and wide, with ample property. How can you call yourself empty-handed? You packed your bags this morning. Are you planning to travel for business? I had thought that my heart wouldn't sink, but when I heard his final question, I still felt it drop. I smiled as well. Thank you for taking the time to check up on me, Lord Yuan. I was only cleaning up. I suppose your men don't have very good eyesight. Yun-yu sat slouched at the table, looking at me. Where are you going? Are you interrogating me, Lord Yuan, or merely asking? The atmosphere grew slightly rigid. Just then, the water on the stove boiled. Smiling, I said, I'm joking. Don't take offense, Lord Yuan. I stood and picked up the copper kettle. I extinguished the fire, brought out a teapot and teacups, and brewed tea. As I was rinsing the cups, Yun-yu's voice came slowly from behind me. If Your Highness Prince Huai leaves again, things will be very awkward. What is that supposed to mean? I turned around and sat back down at the table. I laid out the cups and poured tea. Yun-yu slowly went on. There are secret guards near this house. I positioned them yesterday. After Your Highness encountered His Highness Prince Dai, it was only natural for me to make these arrangements. There were no guards before, though I suppose Your Highness won't believe that. He laughed softly. At any rate, I've never done anything good. Perhaps I ought to have a proper chat with Yun-yu today. Now that I thought about it, he and I had never actually spoken the truth out in the open. So I sighed and said, Yun-yu, let us speak openly. When I spoke the name Yun-yu, the expression of the man across from me changed abruptly. His brow eased a great deal. While his expression was admittedly still solemn, it was the familiar gravity with which Yun-yu had used to discuss serious affairs. I got right to the point. Yun-yu, are you here today because you are planning to keep me in Chengzhou? I am not so bold, said Yun-yu. Your Highness may say all you like that Prince Huai has been dead for 3 years, but as far as I am concerned, the person sitting in front of me is still His Majesty's uncle. In all the world, no one but His Majesty would dare to keep Your Highness anywhere. Your Highness ought to know that a lackey like me would not commit such a grave offense unless acting under orders. But since Your Highness and Prince Dai have met and recognized each other, there is no way for this to remain unknown to His Majesty. If Your Highness leaves now, and leaves with Liu Tongyi, it will likely cause trouble and embarrassment for many people, Liu Tongyi included. I am only being honest. If I have been disrespectful, I hope Your Highness will make allowances. I nodded. All you say is indeed reasonable. I will reconsider leaving. I picked up my tea and drank. Since we were speaking openly, some things came out of my mouth spontaneously. You've changed a great deal, Yun-yu. Yun-yu held back his sleeve and picked up his cup. So has Your Highness. Traveling far and wide naturally weathers one's face. Being at court exposes one to all manner of attacks. I was silent. His position was an awkward one. It was easy to imagine what his lot had been at court these past few years, so I asked, Is Grand Tutor Yuan well? Yun-yu was silent a while, then nodded slowly and said that he was. After 3 years of cultivating his mind in a temple, he had calmed a great deal. I had meant to ask about Qizhe as well, but asking Yun-yu might have been taken for an insinuation, so I changed the subject again. When you stayed here the other night, I refused to acknowledge my identity only because I did not wish difficulties to arise once again because of the past. In fact, there were things I wanted to say to you then. Yun-yu looked intently at me. I said, Years ago, while I was defeated by the plans His Majesty, Liu Tongyi, and you yourself had made, before that I was plotting against you and your father. So you and I are even. If I had told His Majesty the truth earlier, later circumstances would not have arisen. Therefore, there was no need to debate over right and wrong, and there was no call to take offense. Yun-yu's expression went through several alterations. He seemed to want to say something, then stopped himself. Finally, he smiled and said, "After all these years away from the palace, Your Highness's mind is truly as open as the sea and sky. It is truly that going so many places has given me a fresh understanding of the vastness of the world compared to the insignificance of a man," I said. Then I spoke a little of some of the places I had been over the last few years, and got out the local specialties that I hadn't packed up and had meant to leave to Chitan, and showed them to him. An ox-horn cup, a gemstone pendant, sheep bone dice, small stone carvings. Yunyu looked at each one avidly, but at last he picked up a piece of cloth that I had used to wrap the dice, unfolded it, and smiled without speaking. I saw something strange in his smile. I looked at the cloth again and saw that it was only an old and wrinkled, coarsely made piece of patent fabric. I didn't understand what he was seeing. Yunyu spread the piece of cloth flat on the table, turned it around, and pushed it up in front of me. He pointed at one particular place. In the corner where he pointed, I saw a crookedly embroidered mess. Looking more closely, it seemed to be small writing. "For my beloved Cailong, do not forget. Mija." It looked like the gift that girl from Gordio, Kim Mija, had given me before I left. And those words, seemingly, she had asked me to teach her to write. And I had given her a 5-character quatrain in answer. After I read it to her, she was so moved that she wept bitterly and said that she had never heard anything more beautiful than this poem. Then a ripple surged up in my heart, and I said insincerely that this piece of cloth was the most beautiful embroidery I had ever seen, and I had folded it away over my careworn heart, which felt a moment's solace. Oh, the events of the past. The corners of Yunyu's lips tipped up. He said, "It seems this was quite the romantic affair. Neither the cloth nor the embroidery technique seemed to belong to this country. It must have been a foreign romantic affair." A little embarrassed, I said, "Merely a young woman I found congenial." I had seen him admire the ox-horn cup earlier, so I offered it to him and said, "I received a set of drinking vessels from you a couple of days ago. Why don't I give you this in return?" Yunyu froze. "That's most polite, Your Highness." He refused for a while, but I pressed it on him. So he accepted. This talk seemed to have completely dispersed the emotional frustration brought about by the events that had taken place years ago. Yunyu's awkwardness on the night he had spent here had gradually given way to a more natural manner. After a few more exchanges, he stood and bade farewell, but before leaving, he asked me, "On what day had Your Highness planned to depart?" Because this concerned Liu Tongyi, I did not give an honest answer, only said, "In a few days." Yunyu said nothing else. He boarded his boat and left. That evening, I went to see Liu Tongyi and said that we could forget about what I had asked him for. I wasn't leaving. After hearing me out, Liu Tongyi asked, "Does Master Zhao not want to leave, or do you feel unable to leave?" I froze. Then I said that naturally I wanted to leave as soon as possible, but it seemed leaving wasn't going to be so easy. "The authorities have issued a decree permitting free movement in and out of Chengzhou starting tomorrow, with no further restrictions," Liu Tongyi said calmly. "What difficulty could there be in 2 traveling merchants like Master Zhao and myself leaving?" "I am afraid of causing trouble for you, Zhanse." Liu Tongyi raised his eyelids and looked at me. "It makes no difference whether you go or not." At these words, everything suddenly became clear. I had already brought Liu Tongyi down with me. It really was all the same whether I went or not. So I immediately took the boat, first to see Bai Rujin and give him a brief explanation. I only told him that a deal had come up and I was leaving all matters in Chengzhou in his hands. Then I returned to the little house, took my luggage, and boarded Liu Tongyi's merchant ship. It was indeed extremely easy for the ship to leave Chengzhou. The guards let us pass without even a cursory inspection. Yunyu and Chitan were probably still in dreamland, not yet out of bed. As the sky began to lighten, Tongyi's ship sped through the water with the wind at its back, carrying me away from Changzhou. Chapter 9. The flooding around Changzhou had disrupted the waterways. After we left the city, we first had to go a ways north and turn into another river, then travel southeast in order to avoid the floodwaters. Tongyi's merchant ship was swift, and the wind was in our favor as we traveled north. Approaching nightfall, we had already reached the intersection of the two rivers. We moored at a pier in a town called Rivermeet to pass the night. We would be back on our way early the next morning. Rivermeet was quite an affluent little town. Because of its convenient position on the waterways, merchants coming from all directions used it as a place to drop anchor and rest while traveling. Merchant ships of all sizes were packed tightly at the pier, on which all kinds of little stands were set up. Some little dinghies hawked their wares among the ships, though the prices were steeply marked up. 5 coins for a manto, 15 for tea leaves. Tongyi said that all the vendors on the pier fleeced their customers like this, and that prices were slightly better in the town itself. All the Rivermeet's markets stayed open throughout the night, which was as busy as day. I was feeling a little stifled after spending all day aboard ship, so I went for a walk around town with him. The town was indeed quite prosperous, with all kinds of stalls crammed elbow to elbow along the streets. The majority of them put up temporarily by traveling merchants who were passing through, taking advantage of their resting time to sell off some of the knickknacks they had picked up in the course of transporting their shipments. One little street embraced all 4 corners of the world, from the desert to Jiangnan, from the capital to foreign parts. They had everything. The shops lining both sides of the street were sumptuously decorated. Listening to the accents in which their proprietors solicited customers, I heard the Rivermeet town locals and all kinds of outsiders. Looking along the street, the businesses were mainly of 3 kinds: restaurants, bathhouses, and brothels. This was in keeping with the towns I had passed through in the course of my business. A ship's stores were limited, after all, and the fare was monotonous. And while there was water all around, bathing wasn't as convenient as on land. When merchants who traveled the waterways came ashore, the majority of them went straight to a restaurant to eat to their heart's content, then to a bathhouse to soak in hot water to their satisfaction, and finally to a brothel to relax and enjoy themselves. Tongyi and I spent a while wandering the streets, then went into a restaurant that still had an empty table, which happened to be in a quiet corner of the 2nd floor, next to a window. While we were ordering, I said to Tongyi, "You must let me pay for this meal to thank you for bringing me along." Tongyi didn't refuse. He smiled and said, "Then I won't insist." I already knew that he liked spicy food and didn't have any particular aversions, so I freely ordered some dishes and asked for a pitcher of wine. Shortly after, the wine came. I tried it. While it was a local brew called Rivermeet Vintage, it was much better than Changzhou's Bamboo Leaf Green. Tongyi tasted some of the lamb tripe and chicken gizzards in chili oil and said that the dish had an authentic flavor. The restaurants here were likely used to receiving customers from all over and were proficient in all sorts of cuisines. The waiter brought over a lily bulb and water chestnut soup just then. I said, "Seeing water chestnuts always reminds me of a funny story. A couple of years ago, when I was trading in the desert, I ate grilled meat every day and washed it down with sheep's milk and warm wine. My internal heat got so bad that my whole throat was sore. I could barely drink water. Suddenly, I desperately wanted candied water chestnuts, ideally the kind chilled with cold water. I spent all night thinking about them, and then I actually ate some. The taste was still in my mouth the next morning. But when I got up, I found that the piece of fur I'd been using as a pillow had a big chunk nibbled out of the edge, as if a rat had been at it. When I thought about it, the candied water chestnuts I'd eaten in my dream had been a little strange. Chestnuts are tender and crispy, but mine were even chewier than jerky. Smiling, Tongyi said, "This dish certainly doesn't taste like jerky. Have some more." I scooped up a spoonful and put it in the dish in front of me. I didn't finish the story. When I left the desert and came south, the very first thing I did was go to the market to purchase a few jin of chestnuts and take them back to my lodgings to prepare them. But it turns out, water chestnuts have a skin that's very hard to get off, and they have to be boiled to make them sweet and tender. I borrowed a kitchen knife from the cook's inn, spent ages hacking away at the skins, and nearly cut off a finger. When all the skin was cut away, there was almost nothing left of the chestnut. So I went out and bought some more and peeled those as well. I practiced for days, peeling and slicing. Finally, a waiter at the inn couldn't stand it anymore and asked me, since I wasn't planning to sell them and was only going to eat them myself, couldn't I just dip them in sugar and eat them? Why bother slicing them? So I found out what I'd been doing was superfluous. Tongyi looked at me dubiously. "Why not ask the inn to prepare them for you?" Smiling, I said, "It's clear you aren't used to being out on business alone, or else you aren't as stubborn about food as I am. Your business is on a larger scale than mine, so in this aspect, you aren't as savvy. You can't always have a cook around. If you learn to make something yourself, as long as you can get together the ingredients, you can eat it whenever you want." Tongyi's expression became one of approval and admiration. I said modestly, "Though up to the present, I've only learned to make a few dishes and soups, which are just barely edible." Tongyi smiled and said, "Then I also want to go to the kitchen to learn a little. At least, I want to learn to make chili sauce and chili oil, so I don't have to do without." "I don't know what ingredients you have aboard ship," I said. "I'll see if I can scare up a few dishes to show off my meager skills. Just by way of thanks." "This meal is thanks enough," said Tongyi. "Anyway, it doesn't cost me anything to have Master Zhao aboard." His tone was still relaxed, just the same as when he had taken me away from Changzhou. We finished the meal and left the restaurant. Naturally, I couldn't go with Tongyi to the 2 other kinds of establishments in town. It was already late, so we simply returned to the ship. When I finished my bath, I left my cabin for a stroll and saw that the door to Tongyi's cabin next to mine wasn't fully closed, and a light was still burning, so I went over, knocked, and opened it. "I wonder if I might get a cup of tea?" Smiling, Tongyi said, "I just made some, as it happens." He found a cup and filled it. It was weak tea. I wonder if there's a reason behind saying that. Because they had weak tea together before, and he explained the reason why. So anyway, he and I sat on either side of a table. Tongyi said, "Since we left Changzhou, I haven't yet asked where Master Zhao wants to go, and what plans you have for the future." "When you drop me off in Suzhou," I said, "I'll continue southeast to the sea." "Are you planning a sea voyage?" said Tongyi. "I'm planning to find a place where I can settle down. I won't be coming back." Tongyi was silent. I sighed and said, "This wasn't an easy decision to make, but it's no longer up to me. A dead man should take care not to show himself. The empire seems large, but in reality it's very small. I've been all over these past few years, and I've still run into some people I used to know. So I'm going to find a place where such problems won't arise, and everyone can relax. In Changzhou, Yunyu's emotional knot about me ought to have been untied. He and Qizhe could only rely on themselves going forward. There was no room for outside interference. I could finally be at peace. Titan also seemed quite well, and I had heard nothing of the princess or Chushuan. They were probably also doing fine. In the end, I still can't say I've returned the favor I owe you," I said. "It wasn't very fair to deliberately give you a fright in prison like that. And now I've also asked you to transport me." "I think that you don't owe me any favors," said Tongyi. "What's more, Master Zhao has presented me with an excellent deal." "Then let's say this," I said. "If Master Mei one day goes to sea to purchase stock and passes by where I'm staying, I'll take care of food and lodgings for you." Tongyi paused. Smiling in the lamplight, he said, "I trust Master Zhao to not go back on that promise." Looking at Liu Tongyi, I suddenly felt moved. 3 years ago, and now, when it came to the very end, it was always Liu Tongyi of all my acquaintances who was with me. Even if I had always been the one to deliberately seek him out, it was still a kind of destiny. I returned to my cabin. The dark of midnight was a little desolate. In the silence, there came the splash of oars moving through the water. Next, I heard a couple of gentle raps at the cabin's window. A mincing female voice, slurring a little, said, "Sir, are you lonely tonight? Shall I keep you company?" I was stunned. I thought to myself that she ought to change her method of soliciting customers. I was more likely to be scared than seduced. I heard a few more knocks at the window. When no one answered, the splashing came again and moved away. Next, I heard crisp knocking on the window lattice of the neighboring ship. "Sir, are you lonely tonight? Shall I keep you company?" Next, a window sash opened noisily, and a low voice said, "How would you keep me company, lovely?" I was shaken. The mincing female voice said, "However you like, sir. My company doesn't cost much." Laughing, the voice said, "How can a lovely lady be cheap?" I opened the window a crack and saw the big ship moored next to us, brightly lit. A man leaned against a window frame. His silhouette seemed familiar. Oh, God. Please, no. The reason that man looked familiar was that he bore a strong resemblance to Yun-yu, but it took only one glance for me to know that it wasn't Yun-yu, only someone who looked like him. Even the posture he was sitting in and the tone he was using to speak to that woman had something of Yun-yu in them, but it was the Yun-yu of 3 years ago, not the Yun-yu of today. His voice was different from Yun-yu's too, but it did resemble Yun-yu's father, Yun-tang. But Yun-tang was in his 50s now. Even if he had escaped his little temple, he wouldn't be out here behaving like a suave young rake. The similarity was so striking. Was he related to the Yuan family? I simply opened the window. On the deck of the ship next to us, some servants holding lanterns were helping a woman aboard. She straightened her dress and followed the servants into the ship's hold. The boat that had brought her unexpectedly rowed back in my direction. The boatman bowed and said, "Sorry, sir, you didn't answer, so I thought you didn't want company. There are other women on shore. Shall I bring you one?" "Forget it. I think it's not my fate tonight," I said. The boatman said at once, "Sure it is. There's plenty of fate to go around. The ladies on shore are all hoping it's their fate to be with you." Very persistent. As I was about to respond, the man sitting by the window raised his voice. "My friend on the neighboring ship, the night is quiet, and I have wine and a lovely lady. Why not come over and drink with me?" I was a little moved, but still I said, "Thank you for the invitation, but staying up late is bad for me, and I must turn in early so I can travel tomorrow." He laughed. "Then I won't insist." He saluted me from a distance, and I lifted my hands to return the salute. Only I was in the dark with no lamp burning, so he must not have seen. After a while, the window sash on the neighboring ship closed. I gave another tactful refusal to the boatman standing under the window waiting attentively, and also closed my window and went to sleep. The next morning, when I had finished washing up, I wanted to ask Liu Tongyi whether he knew the background of the man on the neighboring ship, but I heard from a page that the traveling merchants from the surrounding ships had come to call, and Liu Tongyi was talking to them now. I came to the cabin used as a hall and, sure enough, found Liu Tongyi sitting with a number of men. They stood when they saw me arrive, and we exchanged greetings. One of them seemed to be the man in the cabin on the neighboring ship last night. Liu Tongyi said, "This Master Wan is a major merchant in the jewel trade." I said at once that it was nice to meet him, and he smiled and said, "Master Mei is too kind. My name is Wan Tianshan, a mere seller of rocks." The other traveling merchants around us laughed. "With Master Wan so modest, the rest of us won't even dare to claim be in business." I lifted my sleeves and said, "I am Tseye. Just a wanderer who makes a living by picking up odds and ends. I am currently traveling on Master Mei's ship on my way to purchase wares in the south." The merchants around us laughed again. Master Zhao is being even more modest. You see, Master Wan really did go too far just now. Seen by daylight, Wan Tianshan didn't look as similar to Yun Yu as he had in the dark last night. He seemed to be a few years older, close to 30, and Yun Yu now was much sparer than him. The man was an excellent conversationalist and had an unbridled air about him. There must be something interesting in his background. He was no ordinary merchant. His face was faintly like Yun Yu's, but at a closer look, the details were very different. This man's eyes had an inborn smile that gave one an automatic feeling of ease and closeness. Only in the magnificence of his attire was there further resemblance to Yun Yu. It occurred to me that examining Wan Tianshan so closely might make him suspicious. So I looked him over again and said, "I find that it is Master Wan who invited me to drink with him last night." Realization appeared on Wan Tianshan's face. "Ha! So Master Zhao was the gentleman who refused to answer that lovely lady's knocking last night." He waved the fan in his hand. "It was precisely because I wanted to meet the man from last night that I came over this morning." All the traveling merchants sat there a while, exchanging goodwill, then bid farewell and left one after another. Not long after, the ship left River Meets Pier and continued on its way. Tongyi and I at last had time to spare for breakfast. The cook on Tongyi's ship was most impressive. The porridge, the side dishes, the 2 plates of steamed dumplings were all exquisite. I said to Tongyi, "That Wan Tianshan just now, who did he look like to you?" "At first glance, he looks a lot like Vice Minister Yun," said Tongyi. "That's right," I said. "And when I heard his voice last night, I thought he sounded something like Yuan Tang." I told him what had happened last night. But when I took a closer look, the resemblance wasn't as strong. I was wondering whether he could be a relative. Tongyi calmly finished eating a dumpling, then said, "Maybe. I seem to recall that Vice Minister Yun has an older brother." I paused. "You mean Yuan Tseye?" Yun Yu was the 3rd of Yuan Tang's children, with 1 older brother and 1 older sister. The 3 of them were the children of Yuan Tang's first wife. This Madame Yuan was of low birth, the beloved daughter of some merchant. Before Yuan Tang made his name in the Imperial examinations, his family was impoverished, and he married this lady in order to support himself. Yun Yu's grandmother was very fussy. When Yuan Tang gained fame through scholarly honors, she began to find her daughter-in-law dissatisfying. She simply wasn't well-bred enough and lacked the manner of an official's wife. She would embarrass Yuan Tang. She couldn't help often regretting that marriage. If she had known her son would attain scholarly honors so young, she wouldn't have approved it. Naturally, Madame Yuan felt unhappy listening to this all the time. Yuan Tang had made a name for himself very young. There was no shortage of beautiful ladies to run to his embrace. He wedded several concubines, each one beautiful and talented. Madame Yu was melancholy. She died in labor while giving birth to Yun Yu's younger brother, and the child also did not make it. Apparently, Yuan Tang was celebrating one of his concubines' birthday at the time. Yun Yu and his sister were still very young, but Yuan Tseye, the eldest, was old enough to see the situation for what it was. He bitterly resented his grandmother and Yuan Tang. At 13 or 14, he abandoned his studies and left home. He claimed he would have nothing to do with the Yuan family. He hadn't been heard from since. He would be about the same age as Wan Tianshan. If Yuan Tseye had run away to his maternal grandparents then, he might very well be in business now. Only, I didn't think Yuan Tang's wife's surname had been Wan. Perhaps he had changed it to conceal his identity. Tongyi said, "I just heard Wan Tianshan say that he is going to Yangzhou on business. He'll be traveling the same route as us much of the way. If you wish to investigate, there will be plenty of opportunities." "Investigating won't be any use," I said. "Even if he is Yuan Tseye, first, he won't stage a rebellion. Second, he won't avenge Yuantang. And third, it's the Yuan family's private affair. I was only a little curious because the resemblance was so strong when I saw him last night. Liu Tongyi smiled and said nothing. When I went up on the deck to stand and get some air, I did see Wan Tianshan's ship swaying not far from us. I wasn't planning to investigate further, but that evening, when we once again tied up at the same pier for the night, Wan Tianshan came over of his own accord and arranged to eat with us. Wan Tianshan was always traveling the waterways, making shipments. He was familiar with piers and towns everywhere. He arranged a banquet on his own ship, but a cook came from shore to prepare the meal. The lanterns burned as brightly as midday. The table was laden with dishes, and beautiful women with their breasts half bared played and sang and poured wine. I hadn't witnessed this kind of production in 3 years. The sight of those women made me a little dizzy. Liu Tongyi, meanwhile, was absolutely unperturbed. 2 women pressed up against him and touched him till the corner of my mouth was spasming, and he still went on drinking wine with an unaltered expression. Wan Tianshan said, "In a little while, I'd like to take you two to a nice place so you can enjoy it with me." I steadfastly declined. I couldn't even enjoy what was in front of my eyes. I didn't think I could stand a nice place. His eyes narrowed in a smile. Wan Tianshan said, "Why not hear about its features?" He drew closer to Liu Tongyi and me and whispered mysteriously, "Some beauties from Dongying have just arrived at a bathhouse in town. Their massage technique is very unique. Wouldn't it be a pity to miss out?" When he mentioned Dongying beauties, I was a little intrigued. I had always heard that women from Dongying were naturally obedient and would do anything a man asked, with a meekness that had an entirely different appeal from women of the mainlands. I'm gonna just say don't go. Because you're gonna run into someone. I don't know, at this rate, you're gonna run into Chushuin as well. So just don't go. Once, my Imperial nephews had been talking of finding a few to play with. Tili rubbed his hands together and said that when he sent people over there, he would instruct them to find a few pretty Dongying boys as well to give me a taste of something fresh. Unfortunately, the court's honest officials were remonstrating at the time, saying that wastefulness and extravagance must be curbed. The emperor's edict was issued, and the Dongying girls and boys all melted into thin air. This was a matter of some regret. I hadn't expected an opportunity to make up for those regrets today. "Let me play host," said Wan Tianshan. "Think of it as an opportunity to expand your horizons. How about that?" "How could we let you do that? Master Mei and I have already eaten Wan Xiong's banquet. No matter what, when we go into town, it's my turn to treat you." Wan Tianshan clapped. "That's as good as agreeing to go, Zhao. You've said it's your treat. You can't go back on your word now." I agreed at once. When the words were out of my mouth, I realized that I had been in too much of a rush to agree. Liu Tongyi probably wouldn't go to a place like that. As I thought this, Liu Tongyi was already saying with a smile, "Then I will come and benefit from the offering along with Wan Xiong." I was a little surprised that he was going. I knew very well that he had spent many years at court and had worked in trade for years. He must have seen his share of brothels. But somehow, he did not seem to belong in those places. The bathhouse Wan Tianshan had mentioned was called the Garden of Fragrance. It was in the main street of Dongping City on the shore. Wan Tianshan only ordered 2 servants to come with us. We went ashore and walked for a short time, then reached the gate. Dongping's shopping district was similar to Rivermeet's, but because the city was larger, the main street was more prosperous. The town had a number of other bathhouses alongside the Garden of Fragrance, though none as magnificent. When we entered, an attendant came toward us with 2 foreign girls, who twisted their hips and wore garments that left their abdomens bare. The attendant's manner was very gracious. He proffered a booklet containing drawings of the bathhouse's various rooms for us to choose from. According to the drawings, the great hall in the bathhouse featured a big bathing pool in the center, called the Pool of Fragrance, in which many ordinary customers could bathe together. Small rooms with private pools were divided into 2 areas. One was called Taste of Tranquility, which contained a Hangzhou chamber, a Suzhou chamber, a Capital chamber, and so on, all domestic place names. The other area was called Experience of Serendipity, containing a Persia chamber, a Goryeo chamber, a Java chamber, and so on. They were all in foreign styles. There was even a Nahe chamber. The attendant pointed to an innermost corner and said, "This is our new Tongyi chamber. The pool is also the newest. There's just one room with a first-class pool left. It's perfect." "How many bathing pools in a single room?" I asked. "Only one," said the attendant. "But don't worry, sir. Even with 3 more of you, it wouldn't be cramped." Well, let's hope there won't be 3 more of them, if you know what I'm saying. The first-class Dongying chamber was tastefully appointed, divided into an inner room and an outer room. The outer room was supplied with a table, chairs, mats, and couches. There was fruit and tea on the table and slender bamboo summer mats laid out on the couches. Though the calligraphy and paintings on the walls were not the works of famous masters, they still gave the room some elegance. 5 girls knelt by the door. They flattened themselves in greeting. Liu Tongyi and I both told them to rise, but the girls remained kneeling. The attendant said, "They are genuine Dongying young ladies. They kneel like this while serving guests. Your gentlemen will get used to it." "Will they be able to reach to help us undress?" said Wan Qianshan. The attendant said quickly, "Of course they'll stand up when they need to." We just had to go through the experience step by step. First, we dismissed the attendant. The floor was of long wooden plank and extremely clean. When the 3 of us went inside, a girl followed us on her knees with a cloth, wiping the floor. Her clothing was different from the 4 other girls. She seemed to be here especially to perform this role. Wan Tianshan sat on a couch, and a girl came up in front of him on her knees to remove his shoes. Liu Tongyi and I also each had a girl attending us. When it came time to remove our clothes, the kneeling girls did indeed stand. They kept their heads meekly bowed all the while, and their technique was unusually gentle. Snow-white necks emerged from their collars. They had a great deal of foreign charm. I was appreciating the beauty a little, but from the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of another girl helping Liu Tongyi remove his outer robe. The lapels of his undergown were half open. In the steam rising from the pool in the inner room, he did not look very much like the usual Liu Tongyi. Steam billowed in the inner room. The hot water in the pool was clear enough to see the bottom. Soaking in it was very comfortable. The 3 girls knelt by the pool to serve us. The massage was a little weak, but there was a kind of intimacy to it. Wan Tianshan was evidently a regular visitor. He leaned back at the poolside, letting the girl behind him massage his neck and shoulders as he chatted to Liu Tongyi and me. Liu Tongyi was next to him, not far away, speaking little as usual, leaning back against the edge of the pool in a slightly indolent posture. Once, I had longed to the point of dreaming about it to have a glimpse of Chancellor Liu unclothed. Now that my long-cherished wish had been fulfilled, it gave me a strange, complicated feeling. Some time later, the 4th girl knelt by the pool holding a tray. On the tray was a silver pitcher and wine cups. Wan Tianshan drank a cup of wine from the hand of the girl attending him. He wrapped her wrist and pulled her down. There was a splash. The girl fell into his arms and meekly took the initiative to raise her head. Wan Tianshan pulled open her dress in the water. Soon, they were entangled. The girl next to me slipped into the water. The scent of wine drifted from her delicate lips. I tasted the wine in her mouth. It was sweet and fragrant, but lacked the rich intoxication of liquor. It was a little like sugar water. I pushed her away slightly and saw the girl attending Liu Tongyi climb atop him. Their lips met. I stood, left the pool, and went to the outer room. The girl attending me followed. Seeing me put on my inner robe and sit on a couch, she knelt beside the couch and looked up at me. She looked a little frightened. I waved at her. "Go in and attend to those gentlemen. I'm going to rest here." She obediently left at once. She had actually understood me. I thought that perhaps these girls didn't come from Dongying. They might be local to Dongping city itself. I didn't know when Wan Tianshan and Liu Tongyi would be out. I lay down on the couch and took a nap. In my dreams, I returned to the capital. In a private room at a restaurant, Chu-Xuan filled my cup with wine. The man across from me pulled the beautiful prostitute beside him into his embrace, raised a jade cup, and said to me with a smile, "Does your highness find this wine acceptable?" I heard myself say, "Supervisor Yuan has gone to the rare trouble of warming Hua Diao himself. Who could say it wasn't good?" When we left the Garden of Fragrance, Wan Tianshan sighed in profound dissatisfaction. "Jiaoshong and Meishong have awfully high standards. Those girls are already better than average, and one of you left after just a touch, while the other only briefly went through the motions. I didn't see any point in staying after that. Oh well." I cupped my hands and apologized. For some reason, I wasn't in the mood today. I said I wanted to play the host, but instead, I spoiled Wan Xiong's good time. I'm so sorry. Liu Tongyi's expression had been a little odd for a while. He seemed thoughtful. Now he frowned and said, "The behavior of those Dongying girls at the bathhouse was highly suspect." "Of course it was suspect," I said. "How could girls just brought over from Dongying understand our language? They must be local girls from Dongping." Liu Tongyi shook his head. "That's not what I meant. They kept kneeling on the ground and seemed extremely interested in what was under our clothing. After that, in the pool, they were very proactive. They seemed to want something." Wan Tianshan and I looked at him simultaneously and coughed. "Jean, Master Mei, naturally those girls wanted something. They wanted..." Wan Tianshan put in, "That's right. It was their approval of myself and you two gentlemen that made them want something." Liu Tongyi looked at me seriously. "You really didn't realize that those girls were deliberately inspecting our bodies? I thought you left early because you'd noticed." He wasn't speaking very loudly. I looked around automatically. It was all right. Nobody seemed to have heard. Wan Tianshan laughed heartily. "Meixiong is a remarkable man. You're right, but sadly we didn't satisfy them. Those girls must be very disappointed." Liu Tongyi frowned. "This is not what I'm talking about. Those girls actually seem to be..." Before he could finish, I stopped in my tracks. In front of us, a person strolled slowly out of an alley and stood 10 paces up ahead. I'm covering these lines because I just don't... Okay, let me get my bookmark. The lamps were dazzling. The street was bustling. He put his hands behind his back and looked our way. "Uncle, were the Dongying girls to your liking?" Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, okay. I can't. Not me. See, I said you were going to run into someone else, so don't go. And I should have voiced it, but I was like, I feel like at some point, maybe he's going to run into the Emperor, which I don't know because that's the end of the chapter. But I'm like, who knows? Maybe the Emperor himself is also out and about and coming to see you. Because, oh my gosh, it's just so funny. You guys, I don't actually have anything to say after reading these 2 chapters. They were just interesting to me. And the ending is just so funny because I just felt, I felt it in my gut. I said it. I said, don't go because you're going to run into someone else that you know. And it's not like there were that very many people left, at least of note, you know? So that's funny. I hope y'all enjoyed these chapters today. I don't have any thoughts. I've just wasted my breath laughing and rambling about nothing. But hope y'all enjoyed. Well, I mean.